Hello and welcome to Glasgow Rangers Nation. This is your news update, guys, on Saturday, the 23rd of December. 2 days from Christmas, guys, 2 days from the big day. But obviously, tomorrow is far more important than Christmas. Not because it's Christmas Eve, but because Rangers travel all the way to Fir Park to take on Motherwell in a real must-win game, especially after the results today. But we will be talking more about that on the pod at 7:15. Come and join us for that. So we're going to talk about a few things. First of all, let's have a look at today's fixtures and today's score lines from the SPL. Obviously, a lot of teams have played. Unfortunately, that lot from across the city did play as well. Unfortunately, this time they did actually win a game. Their first win in two, which is quite remarkable. So as you can see from there, unfortunately, that lot won 2-0 with two second half goals, although apparently Livingston were denied an absolute stone wall penalty in that game. Yes, that's right, Celtic. We get all the decisions. You don't get anything. Kilmarnock won 2-1 against St Johnstone at home on that hideous pitch, and Hearts won 2-0 following up their good result against that lot last week. Again, over a St Mirren team very much on the slide, meaning the league now looks like this heading into tomorrow's game. So that lot sit top on 45 points, but having played two more games than Rangers. Rangers sit second, 17 games played, 40 points. Hearts third on 29 points. Kilmarnock up to fourth. Well done, Derek McInnes on 27 points. St Mirren down to sixth on 26 points. So that is the SPL table as it looks tonight going into tomorrow's fixtures. Obviously, the big one that we all want to focus on is the Motherwell game. And as I said, we will focus on that in the pod tonight. We're going to talk a little bit of some of the news that has come out today, particularly around this man here, Scott Wright. Now, as we know, Scott was put up to speak to the media yesterday, and Scott's had an awful lot to say actually about first of all how close he was to being pushed out the door in the summer, and also the fact that his belief that Philippe Clement has installed a new breath of fresh air, a new mentality, a new determination to succeed into this team, which is fantastic to hear. Look, let's talk a little bit about what Scott Wright has been saying. You know, Scott Wright was someone who was nearly forced out in the summer. You know, he nearly went to Turkey. In fact, we put him on a plane twice to get out there. Decided obviously not to go through with the move, something that a number of Rangers fans were upset about. They obviously there was a large number of Rangers fans that actually wanted Scott Wright to leave. But it does seem that Scott has had like a new breath of fresh air to his career, kind of a rebirth of Scott Wright since Philippe Clement has come in, very much like John Lundstrom. You know, I think Philippe Clement is certainly doing what Michael Beale can't in terms of what a good coach does, which is improve players. And he certainly has done that with Scott Wright. You know, Scott Wright talked about the fact that under Michael Beale, he was very much written off and he was even booed by his own fans. If you remember that incident against Aberdeen, where the final game of Michael Beale's tenure, where Scott Wright was actually sent off and booed off the ground. You know, not great for Scott. And I think a lot of people felt after that game against Aberdeen, that was it for Scott. No more chances. He was gone from the club. But it seems that under Philippe Clement, he has come into somewhat of a rebirth, and he's talked about that. He talked about the fact that the summer and the Aberdeen game was, in his words, he said it was a difficult time for me. There'd been talk before about me maybe leaving the club. I ended up staying and trying to fight my way back into the team. The difference between the two Aberdeen games sums up the highs and lows of football. Obviously referencing the success in the Viaplay Cup final last weekend. He says it can turn so quickly. You can't get too high and you can't get too low. We're just going to try and stay in the same spot in the middle ground and keep trying to move forward. At this club, you have to work hard to get your chances. And Scott's right there, you know, to succeed at Rangers, to earn the right to play for this club, you do have to really, you know, develop that desire to want to succeed, that desire to, you know, to be the very best that you can be. But, you know, I think Scott's right. You know, you do have to work very hard. And it seems that since that move to Turkey collapsed and since that awful day at Ibrox against Aberdeen, Scott has really sort of turned the corner. And I think a lot of that I think a lot, 95% of it is down to Philippe Clement and the interest he's taken in Scott and what he's got from Scott. Scott at times has come on and picked that semi-final against Hearts. It's actually changed games, which, if I'd said to you at the start of the season that there would be games this season where Scott Wright will come on and change the game, you'd have thought I was an utter nutcase and had me locked up. Now, Scott Wright has also been talking about Philippe Clement and the impact that he's had on Rangers. He says, I love the way he works. He's come in, he's been a breath of fresh air for everyone here, the whole staff, both on and off the pitch. And I think that's correct. The way he talks, the ethos that he has, the fact that he doesn't just verbally diarrhea everything out in press conferences, and the fact that he obviously spends time with the players and works with the players is certainly something that has put him in the in the best stead of all the squad at Ibrox. He said his trainings have been very good as well, and the results we've picked up have been fantastic. So it's a case of building momentum. He's just very straightforward. I think you know what you get with him. He's very clear what he wants from you individually and as a team, his intensity of what he wants to do and what he wants to bring as well. Now, that quote for me is deeply fascinating in what Scott says. Scott says about the fact that he's very straightforward. Obviously, he's very to the point with the players, but not so much with the press, because he doesn't want to give it too much away, which is the correct way to be as a manager. Obviously, Beale had that verbal diarrhea and gave away far too much. It's also interesting as well that Scott says, I think you know what you get with him. He's clear what he wants from you individually and as a team. I think that was something that was sadly lacking under Michael Beale. I think the players generally didn't know what was expected of them. The players didn't know what he wanted from them on the field. And I think there was an element, given what John Lundstrom and Connor Goldson have said as well, that the players didn't like him or trust him, particularly, after the Fashion Sakala incident. And I think some of the things that Beale came out and said. So I think just further proof from Scott Wright that Michael Beale was an absolute disaster at this club. He says, I think you can see individually and collectively as a team that the confidence is starting to build, and picking up great results always help with that. And I think we've seen that, haven't we? We've seen, as Philippe Clement mentioned in the press conference yesterday, a change in mentality. The Betis game, the Aberdeen game, the St Johnstone game. These are games that in the past I think we would have slipped up and lost points in. And obviously the big test comes tomorrow against Motherwell. He says it wasn't going to be able to change straight away after one or two games. But you can start to see now that he's had a few more games that you're starting to see the bigger picture and the idea of the team he wants out on the pitch. We have a lot of clean sheets. If you have clean sheets, you really are close to winning games. With the way we are playing, we will always create chances. We will always have chances to score goals. Scott Wright, I think, is very clear in this, in what he, in terms of his impressions of the manager. The manager has a real clear vision, and that vision is clearly from what, not just what Scott Wright is saying, but from what John Lundstrom has said, what Connor Goldson has said, what James Tavernier has said, that is clearly transmitting to the players. And yet another player speaking in such glowing terms about our manager. And I think as well, there is kind of a genuine delight, a genuine positivity after the disaster that's just obviously that could have easily befallen this club if Michael Beale had been allowed to stay in post. This club is now moving forward under Philippe Clement, and hearing Scott talk like this is just further proof of that. Now, look, we've obviously got January coming up, and I think with given all the injuries we have in this squad, given all the issues we have in this squad, we do, I think, need to go out and buy players. There is obviously going to be a need perhaps as well to move some on. At this stage, I don't think Scott will be one of those. I genuinely think he is someone who is part of the manager's plans at this moment in time. And I think given the fact that there will be, I think due to budget and due to other things, a prioritising of what we bring in January by Philippe Clement and Niels Koppen and the rest of the football department, I think certain positions can wait. For me, I think, it is essential that we go out and get a striker, possibly two. I think, we buy one, we get one on loan. I think we also need a central midfielder, given all the injury issues, and also given the fact that, you look at that central midfield group as a whole, and, Jack and Lawrence do seem to get injured on a basis. Sifu really hasn't cut the mustard. Yes, Lundstrom has had a rebirth under Clement, but I do think there is a need for that as well. But Scott Wright, I think, is someone who can have a role up until the end of the season. Obviously, then the summer we do review that, depending on obviously how Scott has performed in the second half of the season. But it is really great to hear Scott talking so well about this manager, and a real impression the players are buying into his strategy. And I think that is showing that this club will make progress, will move forward, and will be a real competition for the rest of Scotland and in Europe as well. Well, guys, that's just a little update about what Scott Wright has had to say, a little update about the results and the table. Let me know what you think in the comments down below. Obviously, we'll be back at 7:15 on Saturday night, the 23rd, for the podcast. It'll just be me tonight, so come and join me for that. Thank you so much for watching Glasgow Rangers Nation, guys. And as always, on the way out, if you could do two things for me. Number one, smash the like. And number two, never forget